What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders, some of the founders you've heard of, some you've never heard of. And today's guest, Don Yaeger, I mean, if you haven't checked out his work, you probably have already read his books and you didn't even know it. They're in your Audible queue, they're in your Amazon cart. And you know, Don, I love hearing the journey, not like, okay, I've won 10 championships or I sold my company for $1 billion, but the challenge stories, really the grit. And, you know, I remember when I talked to Tony Horton of P90X, it didn't strike me that, yes, he sold hundreds of millions of dollars of P90X, but I loved hearing when he talked about he was a street mime. Like that's how he made food and rent money early on. He would put his hat on the street, he'd do street miming, and that's how he'd make his money. Rob Nelson, founder of Big League Chew, talked about he was like just hanging out in the bullpen. Like he wasn't being played. He wasn't making the career. Like he was in the minor leagues, and he came up with this shredded gum that became a sensation. And so just hearing some of those journeys along the way. So check out that and more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you, before I introduce Don, today's guest, the episode is brought to you by Rise 25, which I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran. And we help people, basically companies, reach their dream 100 referral partners and clients and relationships through running your podcast. Podcasting is, I've not seen a better way of helping, you know, encourage amazing relationships, giving to your relationships, creating a platform to give to your relationships. So if you have questions about it, go to rise25.com, email us. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I've gone to people's weddings, Don. I've formed business partnerships. I've gone on family vacations because of the podcast. And so today's guest is Don Yaeger, okay? If you put, Don, I don't know if you know this, if you put your name into Amazon, okay, you have so many books out there, you get 88 results for Don Yaeger. Great teams, Thomas Jefferson, Running for My Life, Work Done. You have John Wooden, A Game for Life. You have Never Die Easy, Walter Payton. I mean, the list goes on. He's 11-time New York Times bestselling author with so many books, you can't even name them all. Profiled some of the top leaders, athletes, coaches, Duke basketball coach, Coach K, John Wooden, Walter Payton, Michael Jordan, many more. My personal favorite, Don, is A Game Plan for Life, The Power of Mentoring with John Wooden. John Wooden, in my mind, is epic. I wish, you know, he was still alive. I would have had a chance to talk to him and meet him. But thank you for joining me. I'm
honored. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
There's so many cool stories that you have, I'm sure, from talking to these people and leadership lessons. And I know people, the way they can engage with you is they can check out your books. You also have some online programs for people to check out, Journey to Greatness and High Performing Teams. I was hoping that maybe some fun John Wooden story that you have, and maybe some of your favorite sayings, John Wooden sayings. I think of his sayings every single day, and they're because I listened to your book. So,
wow. Well, Coach Wooden had a terrific impact on my life. Had a 12-year relationship with him that allowed me every other month for 12 years fly to California and spend a day learning from Coach, which is pretty incredible, right?
Incredible.
Can't ask for a greater mentor. When my son, we were talking about him before the show started, my son's 11, and when he was born, shortly after he was born, one of the first letters that arrived here at our home addressed to my son was from Coach Wooden. It hangs above his bed even today, just encouraging him on how he might one day grow into the young man Coach would want him to be. Not any pressure in that, right? No pressure there.
No pressure from birth.
Right. And so Coach has had just great impact on my life for many, many years. And then we had the chance, we wrote a book together on the power of mentoring. And That in itself was game changing for me because it allowed me to learn how to find a mentor, and how to be a mentor, how to be a great mentee. John Wooden had a very distinct style about mentorship. His whole belief was, I'll mentor you, but it's your job to come and to show up well prepared, ready to learn. I'll answer questions. When you run out of questions, the session ends. And so that inspired me to do a lot of work on the front end to make sure that I was a good mentor, a good mentee.
How'd you first meet him? How'd that come about?
Actually had met him through my work at Sports Illustrated, but then I had heard a story that he was serving as a mentor of sorts to a young player for the Los Angeles Lakers named Shaquille O'Neal, and I knew Shaq and certainly his college coach Dale Brown, who was best man at my wedding and one of my best friends. Reached out to Dale, and Dale said, "Yeah, you." And so I had the chance to actually listen in as Shaq and Coach Wooden shared a mentoring session, and at the end of it, asked Coach Wooden, "Gosh, how does someone become mentored by someone like you?" And he looked me in the eye and he said, "You ask." And I said, "Gosh, well, how many people ask?" And he said, "Not as many as you might think."
They think it's unattainable, Don?
Correct. Yeah. They select themselves out of the opportunity to grow before the growth, before the water is ever even poured. And so, it was just a great lesson. A month later, I called and I asked, and
I thought you were going to say you asked that second.
No, I wish I'd been that prescient, or that I wish I'd had that level of chutzpah, but I did not. And so it was a month later when I finally did, and his response was, "I just wonder what took you so long." So at that stage we began, which was awesome.
Talk about what you observed in that mentoring session with Shaq and John Wooden.
Well, I think the biggest piece was that it wasn't about basketball. Very little of it was about basketball. Much of it was about being a better father, being a better teammate, being coachable, leading others. How can you become a great captain? So it wasn't necessarily basketball. What it was the ability to translate the skill sets he was learning there into the life that he wanted to live. And so that became quite impactful.
What did he say about being a better father? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that the key to being a better father was to be present, right? And to not allow what it was that you did for a quote unquote living, right? To affect the way you came home at night. And we all do that, right? Coach Wooden worked diligently on that. In fact, his daughter, Nan, is one of my favorite people in the whole world, not doing well physically right now, but Nan used to say that, or has always said that when he would come home, when Papa would come home, we wouldn't know if he'd won or lost, or if he had a good practice or a bad practice, or, that was not the conversation that he came home to have. So really important.
And from doing the book, what do you remember as maybe a favorite interaction or story as you're researching over 12 years? I mean, or maybe a relationship over 12 years, but researching the book.
Well, maybe one of my favorites came toward the end. every time I would leave his, he had this little condo, right, that he lived in, and he lived on the second story, and then he parked underneath, and so I would park in a parking space, and I would come up to his condo, we'd do our thing, and it would go for hours, right? He was like, he could lock in and be present with you for hours, and we would go together for a long time. And then I would pull out of the garage, and when I'd look up, and there, standing on his back patio, was Coach Wooden, who would have come out of the condo, or the little, this place of living. And this condo sounds far more luxurious than it was, and he would stand there to make sure that I got a wave before he left, right? And so one day, kind of close to the end, I said, Coach, gosh, I have to tell you, every time I leave here, I feel like I'm a better man than when I arrived, right? And, you say something like that to you or me, and we might, gosh, that's such a nice, what kind words, really appreciate it. Thank you. Coach Wooden just looked at me and he said, I hope you make that your standard. And I was like, excuse me? And he goes, yeah, that when people leave you, they will be better for the experience. And instead of just doing the humble brag, oh, thank you, he jujitsu'd it, and
he uses it a teaching moment.
He taught me, like, are you going to be that when people walk away from time with you? And I thought, wow, there's a little pressure in that too, right? And so so we talk and think about that a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing, actually. And, your book and Wooden, favorite books of all time. And his sayings always are in my head, like, be quick, but don't hurry. And when everyone says, complaining about doing fundamentals, I think John Wooden basically teaching these pro athletes or future pro athletes, tying their shoes and putting their socks on. I mean, that's what I think of anytime someone says that. What do you have some favorite John Wooden quotes that ruminate in your brain on a weekly basis?
Oh yeah, my favorite quote of all time is one he shared with me, which was make each day your masterpiece, right? And the reason that quote is so impactful to me is because it sounds so easy, right? It just sounds like, make each day your masterpiece. How difficult is that, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? It's actually really hard. What does a masterpiece day mean? It means you were well prepared. You delivered on every commitment you made. You were better than you delivered more than you promised. You in all of these things doesn't mean you won at anything, right? But you had a masterpiece day.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but if you do it, and you string a couple of them or several of them together, you can have masterpiece week, right? That's a pretty good week.
I'll start with an hour, Don, masterpiece hour, and then I'll go from there.
Yeah, but that was Coach Wooden's, one of his favorite quotes. In fact, his great granddaughter, Corey, one of my favorites, her brother one day wanted to was, as all brothers try to do, get her in trouble. And so he made sure that Coach knew that Corey had gotten a tattoo in the previous week. She was in high school, and Coach Wooden was just so disappointed. my great-granddaughter a tattoo, honestly, like those are things that you cannot undo, and be careful and blah, blah, blah. And he asked to see it, and she rolled her wrist over and then said, "Make each day your masterpiece."
Mm.
And it was just this really wonderful, very, in which Coach was like, "Okay, I think I'll be okay with you right now on this. I'm gonna let you."
The only thing she could have
Yeah.
put, they gave her a pass, Don. The
I
only
know.
thing, right?
Yeah, it was wonderful, but it was one of those things where you, yeah, it's very cool.
So, Don, at this point, how many books have you written? Because I have an idea for your next one. Not that you haven't written enough of them. Like, I would love to see a book of each of the people have a page, like Michael Jordan, Walter Payton, John Wooden, and your favorite quotes from them. I would love a book of that. Just that would be really cool. So, how many books have you written at this point?
Oh gosh. Well, so published and publicly available, I have 31.
Yeah.
And then there have been some folks who have kind of commissioned me to do work for them that they chose to keep to
It's a
their
ghostwriting
family.
situation.
Well, but no, they chose to keep the book, even though it's got my name on it. Like the children of Stephen Covey, right? Hired me to work with Dr. Covey and all 9 children to write a book that will likely never get published. But it was a powerful and
It's like a
impactful
legacy book.
Yeah, it's a legacy book. There's
Got it.
200 copies of it printed, and they will keep it within their family for many, many years to come. And
that's really cool.
And I'm honored to have been the chosen one to do that. So,
what are the other, if you can mention, what are the other legacy books that no one will ever read, but maybe we should?
I part of my commitment is I don't really talk about those to people, because there are reasons why each one of them sought it, chose it.
Got it.
I'm good to honor them.
Yeah, totally. So John Wooden and leads to Coach K. Talk about the relationship with Coach K and some of your favorite leadership, lessons from him.
I think with Coach K, he is, he's Wooden-esque in many ways, in his values-based leadership model, but not Wooden-esque in the way. I mean, he'll get in your grill, right? He will. He's far more fiery than Coach Wooden. Even though in the pantheon of coaches today, he wouldn't look particularly fiery compared to some. He's far more fiery than John Wooden was, but he is he's very Wooden-like in leadership, in that he believed that that you have to. It's about communication and your willingness to require it. I mean, I love the way Coach K, he requires every player that he's engaged with to look him in the eye when they're talking. Right, that's a key element, is the look me in the eye, because that's when I know the two of us are locked. Right, when you're all over the place or paying attention to other things, I'm not sure we're completely communicating. And that's an interesting. I love the way he leads that way.
And then favorite Coach K story from, again, the years of knowing him or chatting with him.
So probably one of my favorites would be so I love still to play the game of basketball. I live in Florida. I have a full basketball court in my backyard, right, with lights, and in a typical non-pandemic.
We're going to play horse
window.
someday, Don, at some point. Yeah.
In a typical non-pandemic world, I've got guys who play there several nights a week. And I love to go out back and just shoot and play and run the court all for a couple hours. But Coach K hosts an old man basketball camp every year that I've attended for 7 straight years. And so just watching, the way he very thoughtfully uses, he brings together 100 guys who are in their fields pretty exceptional to play basketball on Cameron Indoor Stadium, which is pretty awesome. But then he brings back all of his old players to coach us. And but the reunion aspect of it is huge, and the genius in it. There's the charitable model, which he uses, but he uses the money to fund a charity. But there's the second piece, which is the constant interaction of his players and former players and business leaders. The people that may one day have impact in the job market that they might be going to work in.
I gotcha.
So,
yeah,
using this,
you get to meet them,
right? And the players are getting to meet people who are coming from a wide variety of industries. And if you've got questions like, "Hey, I'm considering going into this business," there's somebody there from that business. There's one of the great winemakers in America. There's the owner of the Boston Celtics, right? There's some unbelievable real estate tycoons. You could learn anything you want to learn over those few days if you set out to want to do that. And Coach pushes his former players to set out to do that. Like, just don't go hang with each other. Go hang as a community. And when you do it in Durham, North Carolina, there's not a lot else to do, so it works out really well.
There's a maturity about that, Don. Do the players even realize that that's happening, or are they too focused on the present of like, I'm trying to make the NBA?
So Coach K makes it a point. Like, this is not a hidden agenda thing, right? This isn't hey, you open a fortune cookie and see what it says. This is, I'm telling you, right, that even if you do make the NBA, most NBA careers last this long. You are going to live this long. What are you going to do with that remainder? And in that remainder, I encourage you to make sure that you're building relationships. I got a text message from one of those former players just yesterday. He was just checking on me and my family, and it's like, really,
it's nice.
He didn't have to do that, but he does, because we're in relationship, and that's great.
Don, there's a picture I saw of Michael Jordan, and you're sitting in the picture with the basketball jersey.
Yeah.
Paint the picture for me. What was the scene there?
Jordan also did an old man basketball camp for a number of years, and an invitation only basketball camp for guys that he knew loved the game, but that all kind of came from same thing, and did it in Vegas. Now, he did his in Vegas, where there's a lot of opportunity for you not to be engaged with each other, where you could go do all kinds of other random things. And so that was a picture from from the opportunity to go there and play. And the highlight of those 4 days for me was that I got to go one-on-one with Michael. to play one-on-one with Michael, which is a story I tell often in speeches that I give to corporations, because the victor at the end of the competition was not who you might think it was.
What do you mean?
You're looking at the winner of the competition between Michael Jordan and me, and if you watched any of the Jordan series and you saw the deep competitiveness of Michael Jordan,
The Last Dance.
Yeah, you would appreciate that
he's not going to let you win.
Still to this day, asks me for a rematch. Yeah,
really.
Yeah, to which I will always refuse. We had our game, and I won.
You go out on top.
I'm 1-0 against the greatest player of all time.
Yeah,
and I will stay there.
What have you learned from Michael Jordan from talking to him?
Well, I think what you learn, it's funny because I do some leadership coaching, and one of my coaching clients was somebody I was on with this morning, and he has been riveted by The Last Dance as well, and was asking me about it, and he aspires to lead. Well, he's a great leader already. This coaching client of mine, of an incredible company, but in that world, he admires like what he learned about Michael Jordan, but he worries that he's not anything like that as a leader. And I said, by the way, there's your lesson. You want to learn. The deal is that John Wooden, Michael Jordan, far different leadership styles, but both very successful, right? There is no single leadership style that you should emulate, but you should study them all. And so with Jordan, right? Jordan had such an intensity about him, such a desire to win and to push others past their personal limits, that it, like, my children have watched the Last Dance with me, and they're young. I mean, they're 11 and 10, so they did not know Michael Jordan as Michael Jordan, and the player. And so they're like, oh my gosh, wow, man, that guy seems mean. It's like, no, mean maybe might be your way of looking at it. But, oh, by the way, that was how he pushed others. And, and there are others around who all have different leadership styles.
Yeah.
And all of us need to make sure we're listening for and learning from each and every one of those styles. And let's none of us try to go out and be the second-rate version of Michael Jordan, right? We've all heard that phrase. Our job is to go out and be the first-rate version of us, where we might have learned something from Michael Jordan, which is awesome.
So that should be like the headline of your site. I beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. I don't see that anywhere on your site. I mean, that should be front and center. But what's interesting.
The best part is I have told that story so many times in corporate and speaking environments.
Yeah.
I tell the exact story about how the game went and how, and our interactions, show pictures of Jordan and I and all this whole thing. But I've told it so many times that a few months ago, obviously at this stage, a few months ago, but my wife and I were flying through the Atlanta airport, and some lady ran up and said, "You're the guy that dunked on Michael Jordan." and I was like, you know what, ma'am? I'm going to just take that. Right?
It's an urban legend. You're an
It
urban
is.
legend, Don.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to interrupt your thought right now. And I walked away and said, "Yeah, the best part is at this stage, I don't even have to be the one to improve the story, right? The story is taking on its own level of
I love
life
it.
and improvement."
I
So,
love it. Yeah, I mean, growing up in Chicago, I saw that firsthand, the Last Dance and the championships, and it was amazing to experience. And then now watch it and see the behind the scenes is pretty tremendous.
mhm.
How do you decide to write a book, Don? I could see myself if I were you being like, oh my God, there's a book there. This person would be great to do a book about. This company, like the John Wooden. How did you decide? The John Smoltz, the Dick Portillo. How do you decide I'm going to do a book?
So it sounds super arrogant, and I hope that by the time your listeners are done listening to me, they will get that it's not intended to be. But I think I have a pretty good internal feeling about what would interest other people, right? And if I think a subject would interest others, it's not just a subject that's interesting to itself, right?
Right.
There are a lot of people I meet who are like, "Man, I'm an incredible book. You can't, you need to write my book." And then you spend a little more time with them, and they're not even a good obituary, right? Let alone 60,000 words. So I have to imagine that who's going to want to read the book, want to buy the book. I have to imagine listening to them after a few hours, whether their stories will translate. Because there are a lot of people who have great stories, but they will never, they won't resonate or translate to other people. And a good book is a book where, in your experience, I learn, right? And so that's how I do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never there are a few people, John Wooden, right? It's an automatic. But there are many others who are, you mentioned one, Dick Portillo, right? I mean, that was privately commissioned initially, and then a publisher read it and said, "Man, we want to publish this."
That's why I ask. Even though you can't share, I'm sure all of those would be, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them would be amazing for anyone to read.
Yeah, and should they choose one day to go that
Yeah.
route, they'll be available. But like Portillo, I knew very little about him other than I liked his hot dogs whenever I was in Chicago, and then he reached, his assistant reached out. I flew to Chicago and we met, and after several hours, I was like, "Yeah, this would be I would enjoy this. This
What
would
was
be
it about
fun."
that? Why did you? What was it about the interaction?
I think it was a combination of things. One was the American success story, right? I mean, I think that's always, there's a reason why he was inducted into the Horatio Alger Society. But the other is so a particular interaction with him that was pretty fascinating was we're kind of talking about this together, and I'm a Starbucks guy, like generally, and not today, but I have always been, and I have a particular drink, a particular way that I like it, right? And so it is one of those things where if you have that and you're used to that standard, and that's the best part about Starbucks to me, it's like several other really great organizations, consistency of product. And so I had, I'd come by Mr. Portillo's place, and I had my Starbucks with me, and as we're wrapping up, he goes, "Tomorrow you coming back?" And yes. He goes, "Hey, I go to Starbucks in the morning too, Don. I got your coffee for you tomorrow. And I went, no, Mr. Portillo, I appreciate it, but I'm good. I'm good. And he goes, no, I got it. Like, I got it. And I'll see you tomorrow. And so I'm sitting there going, that's nice that a guy that just sold his company for $1 billion is buying me a cup of coffee, right? I like it. But no, I know what I want and I'm good. So the next morning I go by Starbucks and I buy my coffee. And I show up at his place and he scowls at me and he's like, Don, why would you do that? I told you I was going to buy your cup of coffee today and I promised you I'd have it here for you. I've been keeping it warm in the mic, I've been keeping it warm for you since I got home at 6 a.m. this morning, got back to the house. And he says, in fact, when you pulled up, I made sure to warm it up again. And I said, yeah, I get it, Mr. Portillo, but I like a specific cup of coffee. Like there's something, just regular Starbucks coffee doesn't do it for me. I have a drink. And he goes, oh, I know. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, I fished your cup out of the trash can last night so that I could take the sticker with me to order your coffee this morning and make sure I got you what you wanted. And I thought, here's a guy that's a billionaire, right? Who fished a cup out of a trash can to make sure that I was served what I desired, not just a cup of coffee. And you wonder why the guy's worth $1 billion, right?
That's amazing.
And for me, like when I look at reasons that someone would be attractive to me as a partner in a project, it's a mindset like that I'd love to learn from and understand, where does that come from, right? That's not natural for everyone. In fact, it's natural for few. And where does that, and I like to unravel. And as I do that, then books become apparent to me.
Yeah. And
really
you're spending a ton of time, energy, and effort on this. So you need to be totally enthralled and wrapped in to the person and the topic and everything about it.
Yeah, I don't work. This again sounds really arrogant. I just don't want to work with people who bore me, because it gets old fast. And so to do a book, you're truly investing in each other for a significant period of time.
So do you take breaks? Like right now, are you working on a book?
I'm working a whole bunch of them actually right now, because I can't, where I would normally be on the road speaking, right? Because this is, we're in the middle of lockdown. My pivot, like in week 2 of this, was to say, most of my speaking engagements it's just what I've done for the last few years, are going to become virtual, right? and require less travel and other things. I want to fill my days productively, and so I started. I could flip the screen and show you, but I started reaching back to all these people who've talked to me about books over the years, and just said, "Is now the time?" And a number of them said yes. So I'm actually engaged with a handful of folks who I love. So most of my days are spent in conversation with people who are enlightening and enthralling me.
Who are some of the ones that you can talk about that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, one is a professional golfer who I'm a huge fan of, who just, it didn't have the right time in our previous 5 years that we've been talking about it. Bubba Watson, who he's one of my favorite people on the planet. and the opportunity to work with him and to write his book is really, really incredible. And so very excited by that. Another one is with Jack Nicklaus's son, Jackie the second, and Jack. That's a father-son book. It's pretty awesome. There's just, it's fun.
Joe Namath. You wrote a book, Joe Namath, All the Way. Talk about that one.
Joe, it was coming up on the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl. And so there was an opportunity to work with Joe. And he's an intriguing figure to me. So I loved getting a chance. I did not know him before working on the book. So he is one where the opportunity to it was both an opportunity to learn from someone and really get to know someone. But yeah, I'm certainly a fan of Joe's, that's for sure.
Why David Ross?
David and I had a friendship that extended back. We live in the same city. We live in the same little town, Tallahassee, Florida. And so kind of got to know him community-wise over the years while he's bounced around the majors. And it just became this fun conversation around the idea that what made him special was his ability to be a great teammate. And so, and I wanted to understand that, like, how do you, and ultimately it became this book that I has done far, far better than I think any of us could have imagined, but it was around the idea that you could become invaluable without ever being most valuable. And in that process, if you were committed, it's a book, in other leadership spaces, you would call it about servant leadership, right? In baseball, it's about being a great teammate. And, but it's his journey to learn how to become a great teammate. He wasn't always that. And so that innate piece of it is what makes it so so fascinating.
Yeah. Being a longtime Cubs fan and watching the World Series and seeing him, he's got a special place in my heart. And everyone who knows who's seen that game knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Who do you want to write a book about or with that you haven't yet?
Well, from an athletic standpoint, I mean, the one that I have said for a few years would really intrigue me. Don't know how I'd ever get there, but would be with Roger Federer. Roger Federer intrigues me, largely because there's a guy who amazing as an athlete, even. Extended far beyond. I mean, he could have retired many years ago and just taken his cash and played dad and, been a commentator, done whatever he wanted to do. But he still remains competitively juiced, and I like that. Right? So anyway, Federer intrigues me. Derek Jeter intrigues me. The numbers will never probably make sense for either one of them to do a book. It's not financially in their best interest.
Well, sometimes people do them for different reasons, right?
Yeah, to do a book, though, to do a good book, you have to dig deep inside of yourself and answer questions about yourself that aren't always the easiest questions to answer. And I'm not saying that either one of them don't have that within them, but I don't.
They may not be in the roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else? Roger Federer, Derek Jeter. I'm curious because, Don, you've studied and talked with so many people. I'm curious of who intrigues you for different reasons. So
yeah.
So who else?
another would be Tiger Woods, but I want the Tiger today, not the Tiger that I knew back when I was at Sports Illustrated. I mean, I want the Tiger who is figuring it out and who, but again, got to dig deep, right? You know, that becomes the hard part in that conversation is, are you, how deep do you want to get? Are you willing to kind of sit there and pull that, you know, reach deep into your chest and pull that out?
Yeah. You know, and you did one, which, if anyone's seen The Blind Side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Called I Beat the Odds. How did that come about?
So most people don't know that that Michael Orr, the player who was featured in The Blind Side, actually had almost nothing to do with the book written by Michael Lewis, who I have enormous respect for as an author. But you know, Michael wasn't the actual featured story in the book The Blind Side, right? It was a book about the left tackle position. It just happened that Michael Lewis knew the family that Michael Orr ended up living with. And but when the book and the movie came out and all that kind of became famous, yeah, the deal was negotiated with the family. And so they did quite well financially as a result. None of that was shared with Michael. So Michael didn't even go, wasn't even at the premiere of the movie, right?
That's insane.
You know, to see the movie about his own life, essentially, he had to pay $9.50 and buy a bucket of popcorn and sit in the back of a theater. And but out of all that came an opportunity for him to tell his story, and he chose me to write it. I fell in love with him, and I still am. We're still close today, and he's actually another name that's on that board over there of books that I may be working on one of these days, because I think there's a second level book in him that will be really great.
Out of your books, have you considered any of them turning them into movies?
There have been several that have been purchased as movies, including David Ross. Screenplays have been written. It's not my skill set. I participate in the business deal of it, but not in. It's just really hard to get a movie made, which is amazing to have heard that, and then regularly look at the board and realize there's a lot of garbage out there that I wouldn't go watch.
Right.
I think there are a number that could be movies one day. As I said, several have the rights to them have been purchased in the past.
If you were to pitch one of them you're in front of the producers, you're like, out of all the books I've written, this is the one. You need to make this into a movie. What's that one that you would choose?
It would be the book that I did with Warwick Dunn, the running back, who amazing young man, but better than that, he when he was 18 years old, he just turned 18. He was the oldest of 6 children. His mother was a police officer in Baton Rouge, and she was shot and killed in a robbery at a bank.
Oh my God.
He became essentially the father. He was the father. He was the man of the house, right? Raised his younger brothers and sisters while playing college football. Becomes a first-round draft pick. Begins a program starting to buy homes for women like his mom. Just recently bought the 177th home that he has purchased for single moms.
That's amazing.
477 kids live in a house today, purchased by Warwick Dunn. And but to finish his book, he and I went to death row to meet the guy that killed his mom.
Whoa.
And at the end of the hour, sitting there on death row, which was in its own right an amazing story, Warwick Dunn looked at him and said, "I came here today to forgive you." I was like, whoa. I could go to the next 20 Super Bowls and never see a moment like that. And, that would be the movie.
Yeah. Let's get it done, Don. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. What was it like walking down death row, being there in that environment?
It was an intense, it was an hour of my life that I would never be able to duplicate.
Yeah. So, Don, I want to, first of all, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for the body of work you've created for yourself and others. It's truly amazing. I'm an avid, Audible listener. I suggest anyone, go to your site, go to Amazon, and you just type in Don, Don Yaeger, Yaeger, or donyaeger.com, and check out the books, the courses, the presentations. You go into, organizations and help them with leadership and everything. So I encourage everyone to check out what you're doing. And I figured talk a little about the online courses, because people love consuming the stuff in an online course format. You have Journey to Greatness and High Performing Teams. Maybe talk a little about Journey to Greatness first, and what people will expect or what's in there.
Yeah, no, it's a course that was built around the question. My father asked me, encouraged me when I was a young reporter, my first year out of college, to always make sure that every interview that I did included a question I would want to learn from for me, right? And so I built a question, which was, if you could name a habit that you believe separated you from others, what would that habit be? And I got 2,500 of the greatest of our generation to answer that question over the course of a 30-year career. And so this is the top 16 answers to that question, and the stories and the lessons they taught me along that journey. And it's reduced into bite-sized pieces. Each day is less than 20 minutes of learning, but with some action items and all the good things that you would expect from a course that you'd want someone to take. And so anyway, that's the guts of that course.
What's one that sticks out that maybe you included or didn't include in there? Because you can't include all of them.
So I included the top 16 answers, which was the goal. I think one that really stood out was the willingness to have to think of yourself every day as a role model. I mean, again, you go to the Last Dance reference, and there was there was that whole piece where Jordan said, if there was something I regret, it's that I was held out as a role model, right? Because it's so limiting in that now you can't make mistakes, because then all your detractors will say, see, I told you not to try to be like that guy. But the truly great ones kind of want to be. And they appreciate, they understand it's a high bar, it's a pain in the butt, but it's also it comes with the territory. It's
responsibility. I mean, you talk about that in the John Wooden book, where he comments about Charles Barkley.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's amazing. So people can check that out, Journey to Greatness, on your website. They can go to courses. That's on there.
Yes.
And what about High Performing Teams?
That course is coming. It'll be available in the next by the middle part of the summer of 2020. We filmed it. It's been edited. It's being turned into what a good course requires, but it's based upon a 5-year run of effort around the world to sit down with the builders of great teams and ask questions about how they created the culture that allowed their teams to sustain excellence.
Yeah.
And then taking those habits of those organizations and turning them into lessons and a lesson plan.
Yeah.
So,
Don, I have one last question, and I want to tell people to go to donyaeger.com. Where else should we point people towards to check anything out?
I think that's
the place.
It. I mean, everything is there.
Yeah. My last question is, I guess, from your last question, which is, what separated you? What's a habit that has separated you?
I would say an insatiable curiosity. I once had a leader tell me that I possess a high CQ, right, a curiosity quotient, and so I think that that's a valuable asset. And for me, it's certainly worked to my advantage.
When someone writes a book about you, Don, I know you have books about you. Maybe they call it CQ, the most important aspect to you for a lifetime of success. Okay, so that's my working title for you. Okay, but Don, it's been an absolute.
I hope no one ever does that.
I think in book titles, so that's why I love your stuff. But CQ, thank you, Don.
Awesome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I totally appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Appreciate you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.